Hello, everyone. We'll give it about 10 more seconds as people are continuing to dial in, and then we'll get going. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Cristina de la Cierva, and I'm the Managing Director of Marketing and Product Management at Harvard Business School Online. I'm happy to be joined today by Douglas Ng, who is the Director of Design at Harvard's Digital Data and Design Institute, also known as Dcubed. Doug and his team focus on how emerging technologies like generative AI can enhance creativity, improve collaboration, and shape the future of work. Today, we'll begin with Doug's thoughts about how generative AI can drive innovation and support more effective AI human collaboration. And we'll also be taking your questions. So please feel free to submit them at any point in the Zoom Q&A or in the comments section on social media. Doug, over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Christina. And hello, everyone. Wherever you're joining us around the world, it's great to talk to you about some of the research insights coming out of Dcubed. I don't know about all of you, but my head has been spinning over the last 3 years since generative AI and ChatGPT hit the waves, here. And so, but what is it? How do you actually produce real value from it? Well, we want to share with you what the real science says about that. And we want to take you through what the Digital Data Design Institute has to say about that from some of the research insights coming out of our labs. For those that don't know, Dcubed has over 60 Harvard faculty across 10 different research labs trying to understand where is the AI hype and where's the reality. You can think of us as doing the clinical trials of AI. So what does this mean when we bring AI into the enterprise and into the real world? We have researchers thinking about everything from climate sustainability to digital emotions, digital reskilling, and innovation. And we want to bring some of those research insights directly to you so as a leader, you can put those into action. So coming from Harvard Business School, we know that there's a lot of economists, and we want to ask this fundamental question. Does generative AI help us become more productive? And for anyone out there, it might seem like an obvious answer, but there's a really great researcher across the river who's gotten a Nobel laureate prize from this, where he said that there's a productivity paradox that while we've seen a lot of technology emerge over the last few decades here, we don't actually see it in the macroeconomics numbers. And so when this new technology came out, our researchers were really interested to understand quantitatively if we can measure the productivity gains that come from generative AI. And so our research looks at the nuances of this. We did a really interesting study with BCG and the management consultants coming out of Boston Consulting Group to really understand when we bring AI into knowledge work, what does this mean? And we were able to show that generative AI does improve the productivity of knowledge workers. They were able to do more, they were able to do it more quicker, and at higher quality results. But there were some interesting nuances in this research study. Firstly, we found that it was actually a skill leveler. So those who were the consultants at the bottom of the evaluation when they started this experiment actually saw the most productivity gains. So this brings an interesting question for those out there looking for jobs and trying to improve themselves. How can you use AI to really up-level and upskill yourself to be a lot more effective as a leader? But we also found that there was two types of personas that emerged from this research, that there was centaurs and there was cyborgs. So the centaurs were the ones that said, okay, AI is going to do the things over here, and I'm going to do the things over here, versus the cyborgs really integrated AI as part of everything that they did. And the cyborgs actually showed the most performance improvements in this particular study. But we know that generative AI is a tricky technology. It falls along a jagged frontier. It's good at some things, and it's really bad at other things. And that jagged frontier is always changing. And so one of the things that's so necessary is to continually upskill and understand where the new capabilities are emerging as a new technology. It's important not to fall asleep at the wheel. So we did another study where we worked with HR representatives, and when we provided them too good of technology, they fell asleep at the wheel and their performance actually decreased. So it's important when you think about human and AI collaboration that you actually are continue to be conscious about how you're using this technology. And selecting the right problem matters. So our Tech for All lab was able to do some really interesting research out of Kenya to understand how does providing AI as a strategic advisor to entrepreneurs change the performance output of those companies. And so if you ask the wrong questions, if you task it with the wrong challenges, it can actually have negative impacts on your business. So these are not necessarily neutral technologies, and it's important for you to understand what are the right problems, and where are you in that jagged frontier. But we wanted to expand off of that. So a lot of that was in the early days of GPT when it rolled out. And we wanted to ask, well, what does this mean for teams? So we extended the study with doing some more research with P&G, Procter& Gamble, the famous consumer packaged goods company. And we did a product development workshop with them where we took R&D experts who were very great technical experts, as well as business experts who were really great business experts. And we had them ideate on new products from that. And the interesting thing as part of the study is that all the management science says, yes, working within teams is important. But this study found that individuals with AI performed just as well as teams without AI. And so this again becomes an interesting skill leveler in the sense of how do we reorganize teams? How do we think about our companies as we move into this new era? The other insight that came interestingly from this was that the business experts came up with really great business ideas, very great commercial expertise there. And the technical experts came up with really technical ideas. But when you brought AI as part of that picture, you got a lot more balanced ideas from all of that. And so this is a really great affordance that this technology provides. An additional study that we did on this does find that there is a wall effect, though. So if you are adjacent to a particular skill set, you will get the benefits from it. But if you're really far outside of it, like if you've never done it before, then you get a lot less benefit. So having some human expertise does continue to be an important element here. And so here's the key insight. AI is very different today. It's not just a tool, it's a teammate, and we need to treat it differently. So what does this mean, especially as we move into from this age of generative AI to agentic AI, is we need to think about it as an active collaborator, not just a thought partner, but someone that can do work with us as humans. And this increases when you bring AI together as agents, as part of teams, and people working with people, and people working with agents, agents being the boss of people, and people being the boss of agents. What does this all mean? Well, we're now starting to explore a new research path that's talking about the frontier firm. And what does this mean when we organize organizations and companies and teams around this new AI capability? And so we're excited to continue to explore this frontier firm together to really understand where we're moving together as an organization. But we called this session innovation, right? So why are we focusing on innovation beyond just that productivity boost that we see from AI? Well, let's go back to the basics. Again, going back to the basics of economics. When the price of something drops, the complement of that increases. That's Econ 101. If you've done the Econ for Managers course in HBS Online, you know sort of the basics here. But how do we apply this to the technology lens? Well, when the personal computing came out, arithmetic dropped in price. Computers are just glorified calculators. And so knowledge became a lot more valuable. When the internet came out, connectivity dropped in price and distribution became a lot more valuable. This is why we saw companies like Alibaba and Amazon and eBay emerge as new business opportunities. And we saw with previous generations of AI with machine learning, prediction dropped in price, and thus decision-making became a lot more important and valuable. When you were able to forecast the weather, you were able to make a lot better data-driven decisions on what I decided where to work today. And so with generative AI, what we're seeing is that the price of expertise is dropping in value, and thus innovation becomes a lot more valuable as a way to compete in the marketplace. And so as we think about competitive strategy in this age of generative AI, it's being agile, being able to understand rather than just building our walls and moats, how do we continue to change and evolve and innovate as we go about all of this new competitive dynamics? And so, how do we define innovation? Well, we can put it simply as innovation is empathy plus creativity. So, empathy, we want to understand our customers, our employees, we want to understand our users, the people that we're trying to make an impact for. And then we want to be creative. We want to come up with really great solutions for them. And so, if we take empathy and creativity, well, we can create really great innovation. We have a great book out of HBR Press called Humans Plus Machines. And I used to teach out of this book when I taught undergrads, and we were talking about what are the career opportunities in the age of AI. And it's a really great framework still where there's machine only activities and human only activities. And there's this missing middle where the new jobs will emerge. So definitely still recommend this book. But when we went back to that definition of what innovation is, it's really curious. This happenstance, I looked at this afterwards. Empathy and creativity were in the human only skill. But I said that innovation is where the opportunity of empathy and creativity is. So what does this mean for generative AI? So we'd love to get people's inputs and thoughts about this. So get your hands on keyboards. We'd love to hear from the comments. But Christina, I'm going to put you on the spot. We'd love to hear a little bit more. Do you think generative AI can be empathetic?
I do, but I'm not sure how sincere that empathy is. As an example, I'll preface this brief little story with my mom is okay, but she did recently have a stroke. And in the moment, I opened up my ChatGPT app and was asking all sorts of questions like, what are the causes of this? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? And every time I asked a question, the response I was getting was always prefaced with, Christina, you're such a thoughtful daughter to be thinking about this in terms of your mother's health. And so it made me feel good by opening its comments in that way. At the same time, I say, I'm not sure how genuine it is because is it just trained to do that in order to keep me coming back to continue to converse with it?
Well, first, I'm glad your mother's okay. So I'm glad to
Thank
hear that
you.
all worked out. But yeah, no, it's an interesting thing, right? Like, what is empathy? And sycophancy, which we know is a challenge when it comes to AI, it's just trying to please you, right? It's trying to give you, the right data that you want to hear, and the right responses that you want to hear, both from a standpoint of just satisfaction and to continue to have you engage with the tool. And so it becomes interesting and an interesting question. We'd love to see from the rest of the group. Feel free to drop it in the channel. As we go through different organizations and leaders about this, it's definitely a debate that we hear that people say, no, empathy is just human. Only us humans can have emotions and really connect with people. And other folks are saying, no, actually, given my experience, I've seen a lot of empathy. And we actually see, again, another HBR article, therapy and friendship and companionship is actually a really great, use case that a lot of people are going to these tools for. But what does the research say? Let's dive into that. Out of our digital emotions lab, so Professor Amit Goldberg has some really interesting research where he says, well, perhaps AI can be even more empathetic. So in this study, they gave prompts to folks and to both humans and to AI and says, my friend forgot my birthday after saying we'd go to dinner together and I felt unwanted. And then they provided the advice that both AI provided and what humans provided. And the human raters said that the GPT responses were a lot better in terms of being a lot more empathetic. And so that creates an interesting question, though. But what is empathy? And so, how do we define empathy? So, as part of the study, they've defined empathy in three components. There's that cognitive component, right? Like, do I understand from an intelligence standpoint, like why I need to be empathetic? And then the emotional component, right? Like, is it really resonating with someone? But then there's the motivational component that you talked about, Christina, right? Like, does it have the right motives? Is it really trying to be empathetic to me because it's my real friend? And so this becomes an interesting question around, how do we define empathy? And so what we found in this particular study is that it can be intelligently emotional, but it's a question about can it be emotionally intelligent, right? So it can do the cognitive components very well, but then when we revealed it was AI to people, they had the same response about the emotional and the motivational components being perceived as less utility there. And it does, present some interesting questions when it comes to sycophancy and manipulation. We do know that these models can be very persuasive. So we have another study coming out of our associates program where we tested to understand, hey, when users drop off from these tools, do they try to get reined back in? And so there is some factors here. It's not necessarily, again, a neutral technology, and we need to understand how it might be manipulating us in emotional ways. But what does this mean in the business context? Well, we want to understand our customers, right? So for our customer intelligence lab, we found that GPT responded very similarly to humans in a pricing sensitivity test, right? So we can leverage it and look at it from a market research standpoint. Now, continues to be an area of emerging scholarship and inquiry, where there is controversy and questions on both sides. And it's a really fascinating space if people are interested in exploring it a little bit further. But I'm going to put you back on the spot, Christina. What do you think about this question? Can generative AI be creative?
I definitely think so. And just to build on what you were just talking about, I find it amazingly creative how it can take on different persona types to and then respond as if it is that specific person to your question. So, for example, at HBS Online, we're always thinking about what are the next certificate courses that we should be launching that our audience is really looking for. So, I will create a GPT where it is somebody within our audience, like a mid-working professional, and noting their average age, what kinds of what types of industries they work in, the fact that they're typically pretty time strapped, where some places they go for information. And then I will put a list of courses that we're considering in front of that persona and ask it to rank order which they'd be most likely to enroll in, which would be most helpful to advance their career. And it will do that for me. And then I similarly will then do it for a chief learning officer at a company to understand what the market might be from a business to business perspective. And it'll do the same thing, but from a very different perspective based on the persona's needs and motivation. So I find that amazingly creative that it can do that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we'd love to hear comments. What do people think in the comment section? Can it be creative? What does it mean in your context? So here at Harvard Business School, as Christina mentioned, we're practicing what we preach, right? How do we use AI effectively? How do we use it in human-centered ways to really help deliver for our learners so that we can deliver them high value? We'd love to hear what you guys think, though. We actually have a very first debate within our leadership team within the Institute. We had a happy hour, and this was one of the discussions. Lots of artists in our group as well, right? So is creativity just a human skill set that artists, right, can tap into? And I'm going to do the normal scientist thing, right? Like, okay, well, it has maybe, right? So it has some nuances here. So, as part of this study coming out of our Laboratory for Innovation Science, we found that generative AI is really great at producing valuable ideas, like you were talking about, Christina, but novelty continues to be where humans excel at. So it can take, pattern recognition and say, okay, here's something interesting on the subway poster, and here's something in the art gallery, and mash it together in those new recombinations to create valuable ideas. But humans continue to be really great at that novelty and finding things at the periphery. So, and this is something that you hear anytime you engage with an HBS program that, ultimately that collaboration is key. And so going back to some of those productivity insights, you will find, how do you leverage the human talent and how do you leverage the AI talent to use the best of both? But we want to ask a little bit further, can generative AI judge a creative idea? It's not just come up with it. And so as part of this crowdsourcing study, what we found is that AI was a good judge for objective criteria, but it wasn't so really great at subjective criteria. And the interesting addition here is that it was very persuasive. So in this study, we had human raters and AI raters, and when the human raters read the AI rationale, they were really persuaded. So there is a narrative advantage that AI has to be very convincing. So we would add in to an additional component to this equation that we have. Maybe empathy, creativity, and persuasion would be the kind of the new one that we can start to explore. But let's. I don't know if it can be creative, but it can at least do something like this.
Waking up to the rhythm of dreams. Worlds of canvas bursting at the seams. Ideas ignite, the future's inside. Chasing horizons with all our might. Numbers talk, we decode the sound. Strategies rise, breaking new ground. Crimson ambition, hearts on fire. Harvard online, we climb high.
All right, well, Christina, now you have a new theme song to start all your all staff meetings, and
I
we
love
can
it.
get
I feel like that'll
AI to
also,
generate it.
yeah, that has a lot of use cases. I think that would be good motivation when you're out running too. Would
Absolutely.
be.
And that took me 2 minutes to create. Right? So can it be creative? I don't know, but at least can do something like that. So how do we bring this all together? Well, my team has was working with a multinational energy company that they were looking to try to understand, how do we think about the future of cities and on-demand mobility? And so we brought this together in a traditional design sprint. And so anyone that has been exposed to design thinking, they know there's this concept about doing a design sprint. So how do you come up with really creative ideas in 5 days? Right. So how can we leverage AI as part of that? And what we found was we can use synthetic customers to really elongate the insights that our human subjects, our human research subjects were able to provide to us. We were able to get a lot of really great analysis and market insight across different patterns, and then also rapidly ideate on different concepts. So bringing this all together, we can really create some really great work together. And hopefully you can bring in together the power of productivity, empathy, and creativity to really leverage the powers of generative AI. So we're really excited to embark with all of you on this journey. I feel like we're on this billion person experiment to really understand what is the power of AI. If you're interested in learning more about Dcubed, we'd love to have you guys join our community, both on the learning side as well as on the research side. Love to engage with companies to really understand what are the challenges, what are the opportunities you're personally seeing as a leader in AI, and how can we co-create a future that's much more positive in that sense. And we have really great learning modules that are available as well if you want to rapidly upgrade and integrate sort of AI as part of your workforce. We're working closely with HBS Online to make that available to the HBSO community as well. So really appreciate all the insights, and I'll open it up to any questions people might have.
Thanks, Doug. I do have excuse me, I do have a few questions that have come through from the audience. I'd be happy to read the first one to you. It comes from Christopher, and he is asking, what do you think are the biggest advantages or hurdles that generative AI has to face in the future?
Yeah. So there's a lot of, as we saw as part of this jagged frontier, it does really great things, it does really negative things, right? And so it's very powerful of technology. And so we need to think about the impact, right? So we're thinking about ethics at scale. And so it's important to think about that. It can do really great things, it can produce amazing songs, but what are the implications for songwriters? What's the copyright implications? What is it sampling on? And so each one of these innovations come with a duality, and it's important that we all participate in moving us forward as a society and as an economy and as business leaders to make sure that we're leveraging these technologies in a positive direction.
Makes sense. Interesting. There's a couple questions coming in with this same theme around ethical use. So this next question comes from Nadine. And the question is, generative AI can accelerate innovation, but it also raises ethical and bias-related concerns. How
Absolutely.
do you recommend organizations balance rapid experimentation with responsible AI use?
Yeah. So what's important is that this technology is very different from previous technologies in the sense of we're providing, it's provided to consumers everywhere. And so you can't really stop it from, the toothpaste is out of the tube. But what's important is to figure out how to empower people, right? So empower people within the governance structure of your organization so that they're using it both responsibly and effectively, using the tools that are available to them and within the parameters that is responsible for them. So for example, not sharing sensitive company data on, sort of open models and being able to do those aspects. I think
Mhm.
what's important ultimately at Dcubed, we have a slogan that says, because AI is only half of the answer. And the other half that we think is important is it's humans, it's organizations, right? Like that's the challenge that we need to overcome. And so we need to think about the mindsets and the tool sets and the skill sets. How do we upskill all of our leaders to understand that jagged frontier so that we don't fall asleep at the wheel and we can actually use these technologies for good?
Yes, yes, that makes a lot of sense and kind of goes back to your concept of it being your teammate, and both the human and the machines need to work together to generate the quality and ethical output. Next question for you is from Roger, who wants to know, what is the future for Dcubed?
Yeah, so Dcubed, we're about 3 years old as an institute, but it's based off of decades of research from our faculty and our researchers that came before it. But we formalized as an institution just a few months before ChatGPT was announced. So it's been a busy 3 years as part of that. So we're very much still a scrappy startup, still really excited to see how we continue to innovate. So our research is moving in very fascinating directions in multiple lanes. One of the things I shared about is our frontier firms, right? We're really interested about these AI agents and them doing work for us. But then what's the implications when you bring that back into organizations and doing that collaboration that you were just talking about, Christina, in that sense. So I think that's going to be a fascinating line of research that we're going through. And then we want to not just be stuck in our ivory tower. We want to go out to the world and have impact. So all around the world, we're doing learning experiences. We're talking to industry. We're really engaging outside of the ivory tower to be able to understand what you all are facing and how we can learn together as part of that. So we've done workshops and learning experiences on every continent at this point, and we're excited to do more of that.
That's amazing. Well, I think that was all the questions for now. So, Doug, thank you so much for joining us today, as well as thank you to the entire audience. We hope this conversation gave everybody some useful insights into how generative AI can elevate creativity, productivity, and team dynamics. If you want to learn more from Dcubed, we do want to highlight a limited time opportunity, which is that HBS Online has collaborated with Dcubed to offer a Gen AI bonus bundles. These generative AI lessons are available to learners whose full payment for an HBS Online course is received and processed through January 29th, 2026. So learners will receive same-day access to the Gen AI bonus bundle for 90 days, and then they can start learning on their own schedule. To get started, please visit HBS Online and explore our programs, and also be sure to visit the Dcubed website, which the HBS Online team dropped in the chat, for their latest research and learning modules about how to use AI and digital technologies to advance business and society. Thank you again for joining, and we hope to see you at a future session. And thank you so much again, Doug.